So, Steve, uh, I do like to kind of get going quickly, as you
Sure.
know.
Yep.
So I'm gonna start just by asking you, how are you? Good morning.
I could be better. Just finished working out and great to see you. Are you still biking?
I am. In fact, today I'm planning to do about a 5 mile bike ride. I just came back from the East Coast and I caught the flu. You
I
probably
had it.
hear it in my voice.
No, I don't, but I had it. I didn't get over it for 3 weeks.
I'm not surprised. This is
Oh,
not this is a pretty virulent strain.
I fully agree with you.
So I blame it on all the hands I had to shake over in Philadelphia. It's just
All I can say is, I don't know. I used to think I had a great immune system, but it took me 3 weeks to get over it.
that's rough. That's
Yeah.
rough.
But, I'm great now, working out. Like yourself, you keep pushing.
Yep, yep, yep. Exactly right. And so, are you traveling very much these days?
Not like I used to, but because of Zoom,
Oh yeah.
I still work with a lot of companies. It's kind of like I like to change what I've done every 5, 10 years. So now I no longer operate. I
Hmm.
no longer see patients, but I'm very active. I love startups
Yeah.
and I'm kind of eclectic.
Yeah.
So they're not all in healthcare and if in healthcare, they're not all in spine. But
Yeah.
I like startups. I think the enticement is working with the right people.
Hmm.
So, like yourself, I have the pleasure of choosing who I work with.
Hmm.
And if I don't like somebody or I don't think we mesh properly, then, I'm not doing it for the money.
Hmm. Well, it's like anything else. As when I was working at Stevens, the main, our main theme was we bet on the jockey, not the horse, and it's always about people.
I couldn't agree more. It took me a while to learn that, just like way back when I used to think IQ was key.
Yeah.
Well, then I worked with a group called Seven Rosen,
Hmm.
and they did Compact Computer, Lotus 123, Sienna Corp, Landmark
Gosh,
Graphics, and
yeah.
I'd look at their medical for them. And what I learned with them is how important EQ is. And I reflected back because I remember in high school, I had friends who truly weren't good students, but they played sports and they knew how to run a team
Mhm.
and they knew how to be accepted and liked. And
Mhm.
some of these guys are captains of industry. And I'm saying to myself, how could this dumb guy get to be a
The
captain of
C
industry?
student. Yeah,
Exactly. Not the A student, the C
not the A
student,
student, the C student.
right? Because you need a combo of drive,
Mhm.
EQ,
Mhm.
never giving up,
Mhm.
and just persistence. And I have found those are important. Nobody goes straight up.
Mhm.
Everybody has their ups and downs
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
things waver, but handling ups is not the key. It's how you handle the downs and what you learn from the downs.
That really defines you. It's
Yes.
you bet that is totally true. Well, one of the things that makes number one, I like you so much. That's I'll start there. The
Ditto.
the other thing is you are one of the fathers of modern spine surgery. So of course the temptation is now that we've got the opportunity to talk to you is to sort of go and do a mining with you and say, so Steve, tell us all about the history. And what's really interesting is if I talk to you about that, you'll probably say, Robin, you know what I think is really great right now? Let me tell you what we're going to do in the next 5 years.
I agree.
So I'll start with that. You've always had a knack for the young company, the entrepreneur, thinking ahead. What are you viewing now? I mean, how do you think the next 5 years will look like?
I would start with an overview, and that is, I always look where I think the puck is going, not to where it's been. And consequently, sometimes you lose, sometimes you win, but it's certainly an exciting ride. So having said that, years ago, I worked with Harvard on telemedicine
Now,
and
how
actually
many,
put it,
is it like 10 years ago,
you
15?
know, I'm getting older. My memory is not as good. I think it was more like 20 years ago. And at that time, Harvard had a group that they put together, and I was with them, and it was called World Care, I believe. And all we had at that time was teleradiology, telepathology, and teledermatology. And it was primarily focused on universities. And I learned a lot, but typical, and it's a criticism, but universities were big companies. From my standpoint, I'm a very impatient guy. They take too long. I helped Harvard Medical School raise their venture fund, $30 million. And I brought in aid through friends from Japan at the time. This is years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was run by a guy named Andre Lamotte and Joel, blocking on Joel's last name. But Harvard, and I met with the dean of the medical school who I knew, and I said, Dean Tosterson, you can't be a little bit pregnant. You're either in this or you're not in this. And he was worried about the Harvard Crimson and the Boston Globe and the New York Times saying they now were, in the venture world. And my response was, you're giving your IP to DuPont and other things. What are you getting for it? And you're spending all this time raising money where if you just got royalties on some of the stuff that could be rolled out from Harvard, you'd be ahead of it. Well, he understood, but this went nowhere. And it's typical. I've sat on a board at Arizona State University for 7 years, working with Michael Crow, the president, who's a visionary. Mm-hmm. And I was on the board of technology transfer. And I learned there that Stanford was similar to Harvard, and they were going to just let Google go. But guess what? They took, I think, 1%, and you'd know better than I do. I think it was 1%. That's worth a fortune. And the role of a president of university, unfortunately, the main role is raise money. Well, here they got all this money.
Yeah. Yes.
But why they didn't see it, why they didn't know, don't ask me. But I find the excitement for me, and now I'm 82, and I used to think a guy who was 60 was over the hill. Well, I got to tell you, I feel like I'm 30 inside. Mm-hmm. I'm involved in a lot. It excites the heck out of me. Mm-hmm. And, it keeps your mind going. Mm-hmm. And I think to live a long life, and my dad died at 54, my mother at 67. So I have to tell you, every day is a gift. But you keep the gift going, I think, by keeping your mind active, your body active, thinking positively, having friends, yep, loving your family. Yep. And I think all those things are great. I regret that in my former years, I was a workaholic. So I did spend as much time with my older 3 children as I wish I had. However, I'm fortunate, we're very close. Anyway,
well,
life's a journey.
You said once to me, you said, I do what I love. And if you do what you love, you never work a day of your life.
Agreed.
Well, that's what you told me. So,
well, but I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think you know that.
Yeah.
I think what's so interesting is, which I learned as I stopped operating and then stopped seeing patients, I did not know that, first of all, I think any surgeon, if he doesn't worry about his patients, it's not worth a damn.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know that I worried until I fully retired from seeing patients.
Really?
I'm
Really?
serious.
Wow.
And I am so much more relaxed now than I ever was. That doesn't mean my mind isn't working, but I don't have the worry side of it.
Now,
I,
Steve, when did you retire?
I, I cut back God, at 68. I stopped seeing operating. And I felt that the younger guys would do a better job, plus technology. So at Texas Back, Izzy Lieberman had brought in Mazor.
Mhm.
And here we have, and now I won't even go over the size of Texas Back, but we have a lot of good surgeons. He was the only one using it.
Huh.
What I finally figured out is young guys who've played on computer games
Mhm.
and used high tech is no challenge for them to use a robot. Old farts, you know, it's just like one of my other partners when the computers came in, he said, "Do you think I'm going to have to learn how to use a computer?" And
Yeah,
he was told, "Absolutely."
absolutely.
So now I can't tell you I'm really good at a computer, but I can tell you I can turn it on and off. And I have people I ask, like just this morning, I was in the gym and a friend came over and he says, what is the new one by Elon Musk, Grok 3 or something? His new AI. You need to look at it. I just saw it. Unreal. And I heard an interview with Musk when he was in Dubai, and it was on 15-minute interview. And he said, this is going to be the best AI out there. And they said, why? And he said, because it can reason. And the key to AI is truth.
Mm-hmm.
So if it goes
That's
back and it
right.
reviews its
That's right.
own information and corrects it, which
That's right.
is a feedback loop.
Correct.
So I looked at it today, and this friend showed me, and he said, when should he start taking the, what do you call it? The government's money that as you get
Mm.
older.
Mm. Oh, Social
Uh,
Security?
thanks.
Yes.
Total block. Social
Yeah.
Security.
Yes. Yes.
And it gave him a rundown. I mean, pages long. He didn't define it enough. But basically, depending how long he's going to live, he's probably better off taking it now if he thinks he's going to only live because there's crossover
Yeah. Yeah.
when there's
Yeah.
no benefit.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that makes sense. But he asked Grok, and in seconds, it
I
gave the
mean,
answer.
it's incredible, isn't it? It's just incredible.
Very exciting.
How how soon do you think an intelligent tool like that will be part of evaluating patients and treating patients?
Immediately. I look at it as an assist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not threatened by it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if it, like an emergency room, if it can put on the map other things you should think about, what tests you should order.
Mm-hmm.
Have you answered the patient? Have you given the results of the test? I mean, medicine is antiquated.
Indeed. Archaic.
There are two areas, and I'm involved with both, that are archaic. One is education, and the other is medicine.
Yep.
And, one of my partners, or ex-partners, Rick Geyer, has just brought in simulation to Texas Back. He always was intrigued by pilots and their training and retesting. And they're in a simulation lab. Well, bless you. Yeah, I have
Yes,
this.
it's that flu.
It's awful. No, it's the residual.
Excuse me.
No problem.
Mm.
So anyway, that kind of stuff is coming. I think just running an office. I mean, to cut back on the paperwork, filing insurance, answering questions that the insurance company comes back to you on, and answering it properly in the first time. It's all going to be organized.
Oh, I saw, by the way, we just wrote an article about a fascinating study. For some reason, when people are doing mice studies to figure out what causes osteoarthritis, OA, they forgot to check the gender of the mice. So they were just getting these mostly male mice, So they missed a connection between menopause and osteoarthritis.
Yep. You wonder how
Dude,
that happened.
hey, dude, gotta, anyway, I digress.
No, you don't, Tucker. I think it's important. One of my best friends from college and medical school is a guy named Jan Breslau, and
Mhm.
he's a professor at Rockefeller. And he came up with the idea of a knockout mouse. Now, whether he'll get the Nobel Prize someday or not,
He should.
he should.
Yep.
You know, as an aside, he just finished reading JFK Jr.'s
Mhm.
book. Now, I have not read it. It's
Mhm.
just too long a book for me. My wife read it and looked at all the references. This
Yeah.
guy probably knows more about what's gone on in the medical world. Doesn't mean he's right. However, he certainly has the knowledge.
One thing about Kim, she is one of the most voracious readers I've met.
Tell me, I almost sued Apple over uh, loss of affection because she has her iPad in bed at night.
I wish you would have. That would have been funny. That
I
would have been
know.
funny just to do it, just for a laugh. Oh
Yeah.
my! Except that's not a way to, But that is
Hey,
funny. That's
listen.
funny.
Yeah.
Uh,
Anyway,
well,
who
one
knows?
thing with the retirement, and I asked earlier about travel. Are you and Kim doing any more traveling?
Not as much as we would like, mainly because our youngest daughter is getting married. She's finishing pediatric dentistry residency in Houston. She is a dentist. She has her PhD, but she wants to be a pediatric dentist. So another 2 years. And she basically has been with this guy who I think the world of for 5 years. She doesn't want to get married till she's done. But now they have a date in 26, so
All
in a
right,
year from now.
all
And
right.
so my wife, who's an amazing organizer and detail, I'm not a detail guy, and she is in and out of Texas making arrangements. Believe it or not, that's far in advance, but you got to do it.
Absolutely. So, by the way, that reminds me. I think about 2 years ago, I got a call from you. You and Kim were up in my neck of the woods in Oregon. I think you were doing a tour of the wine country.
Yes. Oh, it was
Did you
fantastic.
love it? Was it great?
Uh, in fact, a friend of mine, first of all, that was
Yes.
great, and where you live
Yes.
is gorgeous.
Yes.
But a friend of mine who I did a company with years ago called Back Systems, a risk management company for the prevention of back injuries in the industry.
Ooh.
His name's Craig Hall, Hall, and he has the Hall Vineyards up in Napa. My wife was in Dallas yesterday.
Mhm.
She called me, said, "Do you want to go to a Hall dinner and tasting in Dallas in March?"
Wow.
And I said, okay. So we are going to go there. We've been to Napa. I have to tell you, for countryside, Oregon beats it. I mean, it
It
is
is.
so beautiful with
Yeah.
the hills and the mountains and just everything.
Well, yeah, but as a bikeless, I've ridden my bicycle 20 miles into wine country here. Those hills will kill you. I
Oh,
mean,
I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, you know, it's interesting you mentioned that. I used to bike a lot,
hmm
but as you get older, you lose balance. Now you can work on balance, but you got to work on it. And so I work with a trainer on balance.
that's a great
Now,
idea.
the guy who taught me about balance was Stedman, Dick
Oh,
Stedman.
oh my gosh.
And most people, when they order, I don't care what kind of orthopedics you do, or spine or neurosurgery, you order PT, most just say PT. He taught me you've got to specifically order what you want and put in balance,
Amen.
because without balance, and I think the best athletes out there, one of the reasons they're so good, besides hand-eye coordination, is balance.
Absolutely right. And, and balance also goes to your muscle strength.
Exactly right.
No, for sure, for sure. Well, you've often said that you just revel in working with entrepreneurs and VCs, and you give energy, you take energy. It's just something that you just light up. I know. Just talking about the companies, technologies. I wonder if you would mind describing the very first business deal you ever did, which I understand was with a smart, creative guy named Ralph Rashbaum.
Well, you heard the story, I guess.
I don't know. I'm maybe not. I thought I'd see what was that first business deal, by the way.
Well, I'll tell you, Ralph and I met in the military. And in those days was during Vietnam. And pretty much every doctor went into the military.
What? No, why was that? Why was that?
Because they had a program that, you could postpone going in if you're in medical school, but they were going to take you sooner or later. Not that it was fair, just like that all doctors in hospitals have to get inoculations or anti-flu or this and that. I mean, today there'd probably be a lawsuit over it. Just like in my training, you were on every other night, every other weekend. I mean, how can you function right doing that? So things change. But anyway, we're in the military. We went to a place, the Air Force, Wichita Falls, Texas. And again, everything's attitude. So either glass is half full or half empty. I tend to choose full. So did Ralph.
Yes.
So we made the best of a town that really is not beautiful, but great people. And Ralph worked for me, actually.
Was that, so you were in the military? It was like, what, the U.S. Air Force?
Correct.
And
I was
was
in
that
there
Texas?
from 71 to 73, only 2 years.
Okay.
I was supposed to be a surgeon because I had 3 years of general surgery. After the first month, they told me I was going to run general therapy, which meant I had 11 doctors working for me. And I had to see sore throats and earaches, and I wasn't happy. And I basically said, I'm not doing it. So they said, of course you're doing it. And I said, well, you can court-martial me, but I'm not doing it. Long story short, they didn't court-martial me. I got it. I made a deal with them. I would run general therapy all the time, but only be in that clinic Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And Tuesday, Thursday, I did what I wanted, which meant I scrubbed with the orthopedic guys. Ralph worked for me in general therapy. And Ralph, it was like MASH. I put him down in the where the airmen were, and he was supposed to see airmen. Next thing I know, he's treating all sorts of people because he was a great doctor. Long story short, I see him one day, and he came into the military early than me. And he's coming out with the BX, which is the general store. And he says, hey, I was a captain at the time. Hey, captain, he knew I was a new guy. You're going to need to wear it like a tuxedo, but it's the Air Force tuxedo, to the big dinner celebration. And you're gonna have to have it. You'll have to pay, I don't know, $125, $150 for you buy it in the BX, the store. I have one for you. I'll sell it to you for $30. I said,
there you go.
Really? Who are you? And we introduced each other. And I said, will it fit me? He said, absolutely. So the night of then, talking about attention to detail or lack thereof, I didn't even try it on till the night of the dinner. Now, at the time, I was a 42 regular, and the coat was a 38.
Uh-oh.
So I had to do everything I could to wear the coat, couldn't button it, da-da-da-da. That's the first dealing I had with Ralph Rashbaum, later to become my best friend and partner of almost 50 years.
Well, you guys, isn't that true? You guys founded the Texas Back Institute?
We did, but then Rick Geyer joined us. We founded 1976, Rick Geyer who we convinced to join us, but first he had to have a fellowship. So we sent him to Leon Wiltsey,
Yeah.
and he spent six
Oh,
months with
now,
Leon Wiltsey.
why don't you talk about who, because, you know, younger generation does not know who these folks are. So if you wouldn't mind, spend just a couple minutes. Who is Leon Wiltsey?
Fantastic guy, a wonderful human being, also a visionary. And he was in Long Beach, California. And he'd spent some time in Dallas before that at, I forgot the hospital, but he was there, Baylor.
Yep.
And then he moved out to California and very well known, trained a lot of good surgeons, including Dave Selby, others, Art White. Long story short,
Legends.
Rick went out there, legend,
Yeah.
learned a lot. Thereafter, spent time in Cleveland with Henry Bowman, 6 months with Henry, and then he joined us. Rick initially, when he finished his residency, actually I met Rick at Parkland where I was doing my orthopedic residency, and he was a junior guy. I liked him. He's a very likable guy. And he then went to Philadelphia and worked with Simeon and, blocking on his name too, Rothman. And Ralph was a fellow with Rothman and Simeon, so he met Ralph there. And I knew from Parkland. So when he came back to Texas, he called us and he went to Houston and on the faculty there. And then he called one day, and said, I'm tired of academics. Can I join you guys? He first was going to go into total hips, and we said, nah, come join us. But we sent him on his fellowships. He came back. He was significant in growing Texas back. He ran the fellowship program, the research program. Our goal was to be the most academic private practice of spine out there. And 50 years later, I'm proud to say, I think we're recognized as such. We do more research than any 2 or 3 universities.
That's right.
And Rick headed that. Rick is not only smart and a good surgeon, I don't know if he has one enemy. Now, I can't say that about myself, but Rick, everybody loves Rick and his wife.
Yeah.
And he made it possible for us to get Issy Lieberman and other doctors who joined us, and maybe more his wife than him. Because, happy wife, happy life. And if a wife's moving to a new city, she's got to be happy.
That's right.
So it's all part of the journey, but you learn so much.
So in your career, how often have you had to have another surgeon as a patient, especially a spine surgeon?
I really don't know. I don't know. I don't keep track of that. So I don't know. I tend to treat everybody the same.
Sure.
And so I don't really know. Several times, but if you ask me who, I wouldn't know.
Now, Charlie, did you work on Charlie Ray?
No, not that I remember. No, I don't think so. If I did, I'm wrong.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
But I was good friends with Charlie Ray.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of work with him on the Ray cage and other stuff. Now, Charlie was a legend, another legend.
Yeah.
Charlie was a neurosurgeon. He had no bias against orthopedic spine guys. He was a visionary. He was writing a new version of the Bible. I mean, Charlie Ray was truly a brilliant academic guy who developed a lot of products. I loved his company, I should say, his being with him.
You mean the Ray cage,
all the stuff that
Ray Medica.
Exactly. And I was involved with both. And I'll tell you a funny story. When, oh God, what was it called? What's the name of a big company up in Minnesota that's in spine? And
Medtronic?
Medtronic.
Yeah.
Medtronic, the guys, they bought sophomore Danik, I believe.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Danik tried to go public one time,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't get what you call out the door. It didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So they came to me and offered me 10% of Danik for $100,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah, would have been a home run. So,
Home run.
but a good
Grand
story,
slam.
right? Good story. Anyway, I didn't like the guy who was head of marketing, and I represented our group on deals. Well, to this day, they'd like to kill me because I basically turned that down.
Wow.
But, you win some, you lose some. You remember the losses as well as the
That's
wins.
right. No, that's right.
Another good friend was, or is, but I haven't spoken to, Rick Scott. Rick put together Columbia Hospital Corp. He had dinner one night with Ralph Rashbaum and me.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Hey, Hawk," they call me Hawk. He said, "What do you think about this company I'm putting together?" I said, "Rick, it sucks." Well, guess what?
Yes.
He and I tried to buy the HCA, Hospital Corporation of America hospital in Plano, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, they wanted $110 million. We thought they were crazy for one hospital. We turned them down. Rick winds up buying HCA. And long story short, he left there. I think the mistake he made was he took on Hillary Clinton, and you don't do that.
Yeah.
And he moved to Florida. He left HCA, but he had money. And he started an online video kind of thing. And we were the first spine surgeon.
Wow.
So, a lot of it's who you know, who you meet,
Right.
how you get involved. And that opens doors, but you got to be prepared for the door.
My former company that I used to work for, which is Stevens Corporation, we were the guys that funded Rick Scott on his purchase of HCA.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, but you're absolutely right. It is who you know. It's amazing how the networks kind of expand outward.
Yeah.
Now, excuse me.
Yeah.
So one of the things that TBI is famous for is the motion preservation disc arthroplasty. Excuse me. Can you talk about how that kind of got going at TBI and how it developed?
For sure. I was in year 2000, as you asked me about travel. I used to travel a lot. 2000, I was in Munich, Germany for the first motion preservation meeting. First of all, Munich was fantastic, and the beer gardens were incredible.
Yeah.
And to this day, I remember but I can't, the vegetable I ate there. They have the
Asparagus.
Asparagus.
I
But
know.
It was
I love German
in season.
asparagus.
Oh
It's
my
fantastic.
God. Fantastic. So I was there, and I came back, and I said, the next thing's going to be the artificial disc, motion preservation.
Now, why did you see that? What was it about it?
Number one, it made sense. Number two, I almost joined a guy who had the rights to the total hip, Bill Head, way back when. So motion came there, and it's just kind of a crossover.
Yep.
And as I said, I'm always looking where the puck's going.
Yep.
And not a Me Too project per se. So long story short, I visited with Helmut Link. I think it was Hanover, I'm not sure. Link Medical. And that was interesting too, because it's almost like the northern U.S. and the southern U.S. The northern U.S., they know it all. Okay? The southern U.S., they listen to you. They're as smart as the northerners. They might speak slower, but don't get fooled. They know what they're doing. Anyway, so Helmut, I looked at what they had, and I met, what's her name? Karen Budnayans. And I gave them some suggestions that I thought could improve it. And they said, thank you, but didn't listen. Then I was called by Weinstein, who was heading up the ProDisc. down in Tuttlingen. And they invited me to Tuttlingen, Germany. I went there, and they're amazing place. And their whole setup looked like Harvard. And they had the teaching center, and I spent a few days there. And bottom line, I made some suggestions, and they listened to all of us. However, ProDisc was worried if we had the link disc, which was the first one Texas Pac got, and we got the ProDisc, how would we keep the studies separate and not bastardize either one or share information? I kind of guaranteed them that we would do that, and we could, because we had our own research foundation, 501c3, and Donna Onmeis, who was running it, she wouldn't share
secret
information.
weapon, by the way. Your secret weapon.
Incredible.
Yep.
We brought Donna in, and she did not have a PhD. We gave her a year and a half off. She went to the Karlinsky Institute, and she's phenomenal. So, right people. Again, you need the right people. You know, my thought is, it takes you about 3 months to decide on hiring somebody, then 9 months, if they're no good, to get rid of them. So you better hire right. And my problem is, since I like everybody, I put a group together of businessmen to help me analyze people. Not that they were always right, but mistakes happen. But it was a very, you know, growing a business is totally different than running a medical practice. My job was really to grow the practice, even though I took care of patients and I operated on patients, but I had to kind of leave part of it go, because you can't do it all. You got to delegate to be successful. You got to choose right. You got to delegate. So the guys who got really interested in the artificial disc were Rick Geyer, Jack, so see, I'm getting older. I can't even remember. Ziegler, thank you. And
Steve,
you know, sir.
Yeah, Steve, I'm going to interrupt you here. You are, in my opinion, a true leader. You are one of the great leaders in the whole spine world. And you give credit to everybody. Everybody gets credit. But it takes your leadership to keep TBI at the front end of innovation, which you have done over 30 years at least, at the front end of research, which was something you cared about. You are the one who drove the research and made TBI, as you correctly say, comparable to any major academic institution in the world for spine research. And it's that leadership that really made that happen. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
I appreciate that, but I have to say, without Geyer and Rashbaum, and then John Regan and Pelosa, you know, we've had, and Izzy Lieberman, you know, we've brought in great people. And my thing is, I know what I'm good at. And I like smart people, and I like energized people, and I'm not threatened by it. Where I trained when I was at Parkland, Charlie Greger, who was wonderful, and I loved him. First of all, when he didn't ask me to stay on the faculty, I was hurt. And I said, Dr. Gregory, why did you not ask me to stay? And he said, because you couldn't be able to stand it here. Just promise me you'll do research. And I promised him, so part of the drive was that.
Yeah.
But we couldn't have done it without the group. And I'm not just being, you know, nice. Mm-hmm. It's the truth.
It's the truth, sure.
And Charlie, unfortunately, didn't surround himself with people who could threaten him.
Yes.
I find when I'm threatened, it gets my mind going. First of all, I'm rarely threatened, but I do observe. Mm-hmm. So I never worried who else was doing what TBI was trying to do, but I certainly knew. Mm-hmm. But it also feeds you. It gives you energy.
It does. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I wanted to pull you back to Karen Butner-Jans. Now, she is rightly credited with designing the Charité. But I think it's also true that she did not really benefit much from that development. Am I accurate in saying that?
You're totally accurate. I happen to have enjoyed Helmut Link, but he was wrong. He did not reward her. He took advantage of her. And if you want to get an earful, ask my wife. My wife is a very independent woman. She never worried about a glass ceiling. She never worried about, some doctor she was in healthcare pinching her butt. She didn't need to file a lawsuit. She told him, better watch out.
Yep.
And so when you have that kind of strength of character and you grew up in Texas.
Yes. And by the way, I noticed you don't have a Texas accent. What, but I mean, what is this accent? Where does this come from?
It's so funny. I've lived in Texas since 1971. Now, my wife has hardly any accent, and she's born and raised in Texas. I think what happened was, first of all, I used to sing. And I don't know if I ever told you that. But when I was in college, I sang with a group, not the Kingsmen, but it was called the Kingsmen, and it was barbershop.
Oh.
Well, guess what? I don't read music. So the guy next to me, and I'll tell you in a second who it was, had a very similar voice too. So I'd pick it up, and then I'd remember it, and we went on different places, and I like barbershop. Anyway, I kept telling this guy, you better stop studying because you're not going to graduate college. We were at Columbia in New York. So long story short, I'm my second year of medical school up at Harvard, and I hear this group, Simon and Garfunkel.
Oh.
True story.
Who
so
was
I
it?
go.
Who was it?
It was Art Garfunkel.
Oh my gosh.
So I basically go backstage at Symphony Hall afterwards. I say, Art, I guess I was wrong. He said, Steve, no, you're right. I didn't graduate Columbia. So, funny story.
But the end of that story is he devoted the last, 30 years of his life to reading all the major classic books.
Oh, he was not a dumb guy.
No.
He was a very smart guy.
Yeah.
But he was more interested in singing, and he'd go with Simon, and they try to cut records down at RCA. So he was so involved in that he didn't study. But it wasn't because he wasn't bright.
Right.
And so, you meet people along the way, all great stories. And I'll tell you one other that you would love as being in the business world. Mm-hmm. When I was up at Harvard and I was a general surgeon or 3 years worth, we operated at this hospital. Lay Clinic used to be there before they had their own hospital. And we took care of a guy that I helped scrub on for a gallbladder named Edward Johnson. Well, sure enough, I found him fascinating, a great guy, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. However, he changed to a Buddhist. I found him incredibly interesting. Well, guess what? He founded the, what's the name of it? It's the biggest firm on Wall Street. His daughter runs it now.
Oh.
Fidelity Fund.
Right. Oh, my gosh.
So Edward Johnson founded the Fidelity Fund. Well, in those days, as a resident, you had to run the urinalysis, CBC, you drew the blood, you ran it.
Yeah.
But I'd take time. I'd meet with Mr. Johnson for 3 or 4 times a day for the 10 days he was in there. And I learned a lot about business from him. The first thing I learned is you decide on a business and who you buy based on who's running it. And we discussed that earlier.
Exactly right.
I asked him, Mr. Johnson, what do I need to read to learn more about the business world? And he said, this was in 1967. He said, Reminiscences of a Stock Trader by Edwin Lefebvre. Incredible. But those form you. I believe in mentors. Mm-hmm. I quiz a lot. I learn a lot by talking and quizzing and follow-up questions. Mm-hmm. And most people like that.
But you're always driving towards knowledge. You are the most curious. Your mind is always asking questions constantly.
I love that. That's how I learned. And unfortunately, I was always a slow reader. And in medical school, that's a benefit. However, in general, my wife will read a book in a couple of days. It'll take me weeks. So I don't have that skill. But I do listen to a lot of podcasts. So, I learn more. Like I listened to one which I think's outstanding. It's called All In. And it's from Silicon Valley. 4 billionaires, two on the right, two on the left.
What is it called? All In?
All In.
Oh, okay.
Look, you will love it. I listen to it when I'm working out. And they had Trump on for a few hours. They had, you name it, they had him on. Dean Phillips, they had on. In fact, I've communicated with Dean now because although I'm very right of center, I do think we have to have two parties. And so Dean was on target, but the far left pushed him out. Now, what's so interesting is I met Dean through my oldest son. My oldest son did a company called Talenti, a dessert, which is all over the place, and it was bought out by a huge conglomerate. Dean's father was my son's partner. So I met Dean through him, and I recently communicated with Dean and said, Dean, you got to get back in. I said, I'm not a Democrat. I am as far right as you could get, although logical. But I think we have to have two parties.
Two parties.
And you got to come in and not keep, singing songs like Schumer, but come in and what makes sense, support and build back the party. And so when I say I'm eclectic, I'm all over the darn place.
You are eclectic. You are eclectic. It's one of your strengths. It's one of your strengths.
Not always. My wife kicks me under the table some of the time. But you know that.
Well, I'll just anyway, I was going to make it, we had talked back a little ways about Karen Boutner-Janssen, and I think, again, for listeners who don't know who she was, she won the gold medal in gymnastics, and at the Munich Olympics, speaking of Munich, and she retired, and she represented East Germany. She retired like the day after, and she went into medicine. And she's a tiny woman, but as they say, dynamite comes in small packages.
Without a doubt. And she's also a very she's proud but quiet about it.
Yep.
And she should have really done something with helmet.
She has a lot of intensity and focus and drive and persistence, everything it takes to become a gold medal winner at the Olympics. And she applied that to her career. So it's just an exceptional, and that's part of you and me. I think back on my life, and the great blessings I've had is getting to know people like you, Karen Boutner-Janssen, Charlie Ray, the V Boys, the V Brothers, who I think today stand astride our industry, and they are the most consequential entrepreneurs in our industry, in my opinion.
No argument. Yeah. I think all three of them are amazing guys, different skill sets.
Yes.
But amazing guys.
Yes.
And that's what it takes.
But you get them together, they're like an Italian family.
Oh, they are an Italian family. They're just
like, they'll be arguing and shouting, but
they come together. Yes, anybody attacks one of them, watch out.
Exactly.
And I can only tell you, I honor that.
I do too.
I love the Italian drive. Mm-hmm. I mean, things have changed in our world.
Yeah.
It used to be Italian people, Jewish people, Irish people, Chinese people were kind of minorities.
Guatemalans.
Yes. All of them, everybody. Yeah. Now, people from India,
Yep.
I mean, now you look at Wall Street, you look at the law firms, you
Korean.
look at the
Yes.
big
That's right.
business
That's
firms,
right.
you look at all of Silicon Valley, everything's changed. I think for the better.
Me too. Me too. No, I taught portfolio theory at 2 universities. I'm pretty good at that stuff. That's why I made a living on Wall Street. But you know what portfolio theory is? It's DEI for finance. In other words, if you blend different asset categories together, you get more stable returns and higher returns. Stocks and bonds and gold and real estate. It's and same for companies. If you pick people who are outstanding at what they do and you ignore their how big they are, how small they are, how this or that, just pick them on their skill sets.
Yep.
You're going to do better.
No doubt about it.
Yep.
And I think that,
Even
that's the beauty of the United States.
yeah.
First of all, Western Europe, you're either born into the right family with the money and you live there. In the U.S., like myself, I grew up very poor, very poor. In fact, it's one of the things that drives some of my friends and my family nuts. When I go to a store, I go to the sales rack. When I go to resale stores, believe it or not, my wife said, never tell anybody about that. Well, I'm proud of it. So it's just a way, having grown up poor. Now, I can tell you
Yes.
so many of my friends who really made it, who I've mentioned earlier, they grew up poor. Maybe not as poor as I was, but how do you judge that? But the truth is, we never went out to restaurants. So I love going to restaurants. Same time, not if it's too expensive. So it's, whether it's on my nickel or somebody else's nickel. I don't like that.
I was on Wall Street for what, 30 years or so. It was really common. I'm in New York talking to some typical Wall Street guys. The male, we're going to compare each other's wealth or whatever. So it's usually the biggest deal. So you go back and forth. You and me, we would get into these sort of tug matches over, well, I only spent this much for a hotel room. Oh, really? Well, I got a hotel room for $15. I mean, that's what we would argue about. We'd have a contest. Who could get the cheapest hotel? It's like,
yeah.
Oh.
Well, one of the things that I might mention to you
Yes.
that I had told you about before, but when I
Yes.
say I'm looking where the puck is going,
Yes.
there is a huge kind of, I don't know the right word. I wouldn't call it controversy, but maybe turf battle between surgeons and interventionalists.
Yeah.
Now, we had interventionalists at Texas Back. They're great. I think the last thing a patient wants to see, or the last doctor, is a surgeon. So most patients go to an interventionalist or their GP or whatever first. The fight now between surgeons and interventionalists is, to me, ridiculous. So I helped put together a group that you're going to hear more about called the Global Spine Initiative.
Okay.
And what it is bringing together surgeons, and I brought 5 or 6 of the best guys cross country, surgeons, neurosurgeon and orthopedic guys, well known, and similar or more interventionalists. And the goal is to help define for the specialties who's competent at doing what kind of training is needed, what kind of mentorship, if any, how you can delegate and not think you have to do it all, not overutilize the system, get paid for what you're doing, but do right for the patient. So my goal has always been the patient is in the center of the universe. It's not the insurance company. It's not the attorney. It's not all the other factions that fight over things. The patient. And I think now with AI, we talked about earlier, I think with Doge,
Mm-hmm.
When we start to see the criminality in Medicare, Medicaid, the insurance companies, and how they've taken advantage of things for the almighty dollar, I think it's got to be kind of reconstituted in a way that's best for the patient.
Yep.
Not restricting care, utilizing more ancillary help, which includes PAs, nurse clinicians, assistants in one form or another, and revamp it because we're antiquated.
Well, and I think AI is really the key that unlocks that door. I really think, let's call it AI triage, for example. AI can help figure out where does the patient go. Is it going to go surgeon, interventionalist, whatever. And for the surgeon, I know a lot of them will resist it, but from their perspective, you may have to see 6 patients to sort out who the one patient that's right for surgery. So you see 6 to get one paying customer. Use AI on the front end, and maybe they can cut that down to maybe you only see 2 or 3 to get one paying customer because you're slotting the other guys where they really, the other patients where they really should be going. So I agree with you.
I fully agree with that. I mentioned earlier that I helped Harvard set up telemedicine.
Yep.
Well, since then, being eclectic, I've helped form 2 companies. One is called Recuro Health, which basically is primary care, but we've integrated with this navigation, i.e. tell you who to go to when, where to buy your drugs, because your insurance company is making money on the drugs anyway. They might not be the best people to go to.
Big time money. Yeah.
We rolled in all 50 states, primary care and mental health, and it's doing well. The second company is called MRS, and it stood for musculoskeletal risk stratification. Too big a name. Health. And what there we're doing, and you get a kick out of this, we've got the Arkansas Municipal League behind us, so you know all about that. And we're dealing with self-insured work comp because so much money's wasted on that.
For sure.
So now, if you could streamline that using AI, and we're in the preliminary stages, but it's starting to happen. So those are 2 big areas that
Absolutely.
I see, in addition to spine, where we need to change healthcare.
Again, but you were talking about this right at the very beginning with TBI. I mean, TBI, I think, stood out. You offered what? Ergonomic analysis. You had chiropractic. You had a psychologist. I mean, who had a psychologist on staff? You did.
Well, where we learned
you were probably the very first.
Nope, that's what I was about to tell you. When we started with Rashbaum and I, we visited Rancho Los Amigos in California. Vert Mooney was there. We saw how he used his system to treat patients. It was a group, okay? So we took that and we brought that to Texas. So we didn't come up with it, but we probably have been the most successful at it. But, you don't always have your own idea. But sometimes somebody else's idea is great, and it's almost like Hertz and whatever the other one is. Avis, And so I look at us that we've kind of melded together what needed to be melded together, and it's been successful.
So one of the comments, Steve Garfin is a great mutual friend for you and me. He once said about your relationship with Ralph Rashbaum, he said this. He said, I was impressed with how Steve and Ralph were not afraid to sit on a podium knowing that 90% of the audience disagreed with what they were doing. Right?
It's true. No, it's true. And it's interesting. I told you Rashbaum trained with Rothman.
Yeah.
And what was so interesting, Rothman wanted him to stay in academics. I convinced him to join me and let's do TBI.
The end of that story, though, is that you guys were right.
Well, you don't know that at the time, right?
No, but
You don't know
you
what fork you're
you
taking. No,
pulled
no,
them
no.
all with
But,
you.
well, I got to tell you, I'm thrilled that happened. Rothman, who was a very interesting guy, very smart guy, he wouldn't talk to us because Ralph left academia. But then when he had trouble, he'd call me when
Yeah.
things were changing and going to HMOs and all this, and he'd come
Yeah.
down to visit to want to know how we were handling things. So, and I never had a problem with that
No.
because, like
Right.
attorneys, you could fight, but you gotta see what can you learn from the other guy.
Exactly.
And so he had his own kind of, I don't know the right word, but MO.
Yeah.
As a funny example, we're in China because with Hanson Yuan,
Mhm.
and we helped China form their orthopedic association. So I'm at the airport about to leave, and I see a guy in a three-piece suit. I'm in shorts and a t-shirt. Looked like it was Rothman. So I yell out, "Hey, Dick, is that you?" Yeah, it was.
Oh my
But
gosh.
he had this air. Now everybody's
Yeah.
sweating to death, and he's
Yeah.
wearing a
Yeah.
three-piece suit.
Yeah.
Now you wouldn't
Very
find us
elegant.
like that.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
a very smart guy and very accomplished. But that's what I'm saying. We all have different MOs.
Yeah. But you know what? We all blend together. We all have different
Oh,
MOs. We all contribute in our way. I mean, you know, Punjabi.
oh,
I
yeah.
mean, my gosh. And you look at all the guys, coming out as Gunnar Anderson. The legacy he represents. I mean, my goodness sakes.
As an aside, I don't know if you know
Yes.
this or not. Gunnar lives 3 houses from me here
Yes.
in
I know.
Arizona.
I know.
Hanson bought the lot next to me.
I know.
We were all close
Well,
friends.
yes. People like being around you, Steve. That's the
Well,
fact.
not me. I like being around
Uh,
them.
you just,
And so it's what's so interesting is, in fact, Tony Young, I was with him at lunch the other day, and we're all different. We're all very different,
yeah.
but we get on.
Yeah. No, that's it. That's it exactly. It's an amazing group. Yeah, I was just thinking through all the people that you and I both have worked with and known. Of course, Jack Ziegler is amazing. The body of work that Geyer and Ziegler and under your leadership at TBI put together is just amazing. Was it like 20-year follow-up on disc arthroplasty?
Oh, yeah.
I
And
mean, oh
that
my
has a,
gosh.
a lot to do with Geyer, Ziegler, Blumenthal,
And Blumenthal,
but
yes, of course.
also the key was really Donna. Having a research institute
Donna on
who
Mike.
headed by Donna, who was a statistician. So
Yep.
we've never gotten a paper turned down because of statistics, because it doesn't roll out if the stats aren't right. And so we've been fortunate in having people, some left us. John Regan left us, he's in
Mm-hmm.
LA.
Mm-hmm.
And Neil Anand, was going to stay. He left us.
Mm-hmm.
Pelosi left us. But you know what? I had the philosophy of Texas Instruments. You roll out, you build a name for yourself. It's a nice a reflection on Texas back. So I never looked at
Well,
it. How could you leave? I looked at it. I
yeah.
wish you the best, and you
But
build our
Steve,
name.
let me put it this way. You always attracted people that everybody else wanted. And just think of the opposite. What if you always attracted people nobody wanted?
I agree, and I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to hear. I didn't think of it that way, but like Izzy Lieberman, took me 18 months to get him. What a powerhouse
Oh
he
my
is.
gosh.
So
Yes.
it's exciting. But once you get a few of these people, others are more
Well,
inclined to join you.
now, Steve, you were one of the people that helped put together ISASS.
Mhm.
Originally the Spine Arthroplasty Society, I might add.
Right.
So, after having founded that organization, after having founded journals, after all of these things you've done, are we reaching kind of an inflection point, do you think? I noticed that NAS is shrinking. They just sold their building. it seems as though the traditional meetings like this are getting harder and harder to make work. Are we moving into kind of a new phase of how younger surgeons are learning and getting trained, do you think?
Yes, I do. But I also think, you've got to see where the market's moving.
Yeah.
So, in essence, if you look at what Stryker recently did, they got rid of their spine division and they're focusing on interventionalists.
That's right.
If you look at what Boston Scientific recently did or what they're doing, and you look around, and I believe insurance companies don't like surgeons because probably the minimum cost when a surgeon takes care of a patient is high. If an interventionalist comes in, and fortunately it's been limited how many injections are reasonable, it's much less of a cost. And so you got to look at where things are going. So everything's going to minimally invasive. I visited Arthrex a few months ago to meet with the founder. And I went with another woman that you know, Sharon O'Reilly.
Yeah.
And Sharon's a good friend, as you are.
Yeah.
And met with the founder, who had nothing, German-American, had nothing. And she knew him way back when he had a bridge table trying to go to a conference to show a few goods.
Wow.
Now, everything's minimally invasive. And I mentioned Tony Young to you earlier. It turns out his son, Chris Young, is one of the leaders in terms of endoscopy. And one of TBI's partners now is also one of the leaders because it's going to that. But it's not an easy thing to do. It takes a fair amount of training. Again, the younger guys are going to be better at it because they're used to computer games. They're used to looking on the screen and moving their hands. And so you're right. Everything's changing. You got to figure out where's the change. How do you adapt, or how do you work with the change? Don't be threatened by it. You learn every time. And as you mentioned earlier, you love to learn. I love to learn. And so, and it keeps your brain going.
Absolutely.
And so the people who are afraid and they need to protect their turf, they don't excite me.
No. Well, it's been a heck of a journey. And so if I were to summarize the things that you're looking ahead towards, of course, AI. And by the way, AI, I was listening, I think, to Bill Gates recently, and he said the next 5 years will be fantastic for AI. It'd be so helpful. But 5 years following that could be pretty dangerous with AI. What do you think?
I don't worry about the danger side. I'm a positive thinker. I think that things are changing in our country radically. I basically feel the same things happening in science. I look at, I like looking at longevity and how we're going to increase lifespan and whether it's going to be stem cells, what it's going to be, I'm not sure. But those are exciting to me. You could say the same thing on stem cells. Are we going to clone people? Are we going to do that? Maybe. I don't think about that. I think about the positive sides. Can we cure Parkinson's, which as we get older?
Huge.
In Alzheimer's, I mean, that alone will bankrupt the country. So we've got to work on all of this. And the excitement is, will AI accelerate the findings, the solutions?
Yeah, it will.
And I agree with you.
Will.
I think it will. That's where it's going. So like a Me Too, another disc, another page.
No. You're absolutely right. We're at, the improvements are going to come in other directions. I agree with you. And anyway.
And I do see opportunity, like with your old organization, orthopedics this week. I think a lot of teaching can be done with industry funding it and a charge for surgeons to attend rather than go to meetings.
Well,
And
yeah. Have you looked at the Seattle Science Foundation?
oh, without a doubt.
Isn't
And
that amazing?
it's,
Aren't they amazing?
well, they came from nothing, an
Yeah,
idea.
exactly.
And, if you look back at Texas back when we used to put on conferences, we used telecommunications, we used the satellite. We had a combined meeting with Switzerland. You had to work out the timing, who's sleeping, who's operating. But it all started.
Yeah,
And now
yeah,
somebody's picked it up and renovating it.
yeah.
So I personally think it's fantastic. And it's Seattle Science Foundation, but that shouldn't stop others from taking another
Of course.
corner of that.
There's a way to do this, incorporating the latest technology. You don't need to go. One of my little things about doing conferences. I'm a big fan of when Greenwald was running CCJR. He picked two locations, Las Vegas and Orlando. Easy to get to, family friendly, all that. And that's where he held his meetings every year. You always knew where the spring meeting was and the fall meeting was.
Yeah. Well, what's so key, and you started in this, you used to put on stem cell conferences in Lower Manhattan.
I know. Wasn't that great?
Fantastic. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
And so many ideas cross-pollinated. And, those things have to be revamped. So what do I think? I think specialty things are going to draw people.
Yes.
So we'll see. But, otherwise, NAS, they're in trouble. And they're worried about it.
Well, the problem is you have to be creative. You
exactly
have
right.
Retest your assumptions, look at things in a new direction, new approach. This is where I hate to do this to you, Steve. I'm going to compliment you again. Hang on. You ready?
No.
It takes leadership.
Well, my wife says, my wife says when somebody says something like that?
Yeah.
Says, yes, Steve is a legend in his own mind.
Hey,
if that
I
doesn't
belong
keep
to the same club,
if
brother.
That doesn't keep you grounded.
Well,
but
she sees you in your underwear, so
Well, that's right.
There you go.
That's for sure.
Well, Steve, this has been a fantastic conversation. I just love talking to you so much.
Well, I must say I do with you, and you stimulate other thoughts. So I'm going to think a little more about meetings, believe it or not.
Well,
I think what new things, what new forms, what new exchange of ideas, and how's it going to be done in a new way?
Use new technology, be open-minded, try new, for sure. All right. And remind me again, what kind of dog do you have? It's a maxi poo?
Maltese poo.
Maltese poo.
M-A-L, Maltese and poodle.
Got it.
And he's now in the house. I'm in my man cave, but I'm going to get him and walk him. I got to tell you, I have 4 kids. He's my 5th. He's my favorite.
Well, yeah. They don't talk back much.
No, and they love you no matter what.
Have a great rest of the day, buddy.
Hey, I appreciate your time, Robin. Thanks so much.
Same here.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.